Now, coping with dementia is extremely difficult and emotional, of course, for any family going through it. It's often said that one of the toughest things about it is getting to know the facts about the condition and then finding out, what help and support's available. Well, this week is Dementia Action Week, the Alzheimer's Society's biggest and longest-running awareness campaign. Well, Dr. Clarissa Giebel from the University of Liverpool has been carrying out research aimed at helping people with dementia to live well and to live independently at home for as long as possible. She also looked at addressing inequalities and getting the right care for people. Well, someone who's contributed to the research is Kath, and she's been telling me all about looking after her mum and what a lovely person she is.
Well, my mum was an intelligent lady, Sean. In 1938, she won a scholarship to Exeter School for Girls, and she went on to work in the labs at ICI. So I suppose looking back, we first probably realised she frequently started to repeat herself. She lost interest in reading books and doing crosswords. She'd always managed the household finances, but she was becoming fixated about money, and she started to have problems when handling money, paying for things, and this is when the alarm bells really started to ring.
Wow. So did you have to take over her finances and manage those from there?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
What was that like for your mum? Did your mum sort of fight against it in a way, or was she happy for you to do that?
Probably fought against it a bit because she, like I said, always managed all the financial affairs. So why was I now wanting to look at, her bank accounts and things?
No. It is a difficult thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah, I felt I was intruding into my parents' financial affairs. I mean, thankfully, they had planned ahead and they'd put processes in place to help me manage their affairs if the time ever came. But when the time did come, it was really difficult, yeah.
Did you find there was support and advice readily available or not?
Not really, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't there. It was just I was trying to work. I was also as a carer for my mum, but and my dad, actually, because my dad had dementia as well. I mean, I didn't see it that way, but that was what I was doing. So I was having to look at the internet, which wasn't as advanced as it is now. So, no, it wasn't readily available.
And I suppose in a way that you must have got a little bit stubborn about it, saying, this is my mum, I can sort this out, I'm okay, I don't need help. Was it like that for you?
Yeah, I mean, you don't realise, that you are a carer, and it's a difficult time for all, and there is support available, but it's accessing and finding that support when you're in the position, as opposed to years before being educated about it.
And I don't suppose, really, Kath, it's something you prepare yourself for in any way, is it?
No, it's not. And I think it's really important that, we all do understand the impact that dementia can have on our lives if we're touched by it.
Well, what would your advice be to someone listening today, maybe whose loved one is diagnosed with dementia, Kath? I mean, about looking after them and sorting the finances out.
I'd say, firstly, don't delay in getting a diagnosis. If you've got suspicions, don't go into denial. I would say get a power of attorney. But again, I'd urge people not to wait until you're in that situation. Sort out your affairs now, because the earlier that you do that, the easier it's going to be. And also research in advance, where can I get help if I find myself in these situations.
How do you hope Dr. Giebel's research will help make a difference?
I'm really thankful that Carissa's study has shined the spotlight on the practical support that families need to navigate their way through what is a really challenging time. And it's amazing how hard Clarissa and her colleagues work. They work so hard to help provide help for us all. And it's therefore so important to publicise the research work and findings, raise awareness to young and old. Nobody knows when dementia may impact on their life.
And how's your life now, Kath?
My life's okay. I'm quite fortunate now. But, I've been down that path with both my mum and my dad, and it's a tough, time, and probably took 10 years out of my life. But I was their daughter. I was giving back. They'd given to me all their lives. They didn't know me, but they knew that I cared, and I knew that they knew that I cared.
Kath, listen, thank you so much for sharing that today with us, and thanks for your really good advice. I'm sure a lot of people listening will be thinking, wow, that's priceless what you said there. I really appreciate that.
Well, thanks, Sean. Thanks for letting me talk to you.
That's Kath Halpin, and many thanks to Kath for sharing her experience there. Well, online listening to that is Dr. Clarissa Giebel from the University of Liverpool. Clarissa, a very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. Just tell us about the research you've been doing. What aspects of dementia have you been looking at?
Yes, of course. So my research and the research of our team is really looking at post-diagnosis. So what happens the moment someone receives a diagnosis of dementia and the barriers they can face in trying to access care. So we know that people with dementia and their family carers will need a lot of support, and that will increase as the dementia progresses. But unfortunately, our research has shown that there's so many difficulties for people to access care. They might not know where to access care, as Kath was saying as well. So, for example, how to access a daycare centre or respite care or support groups or just knowledge about dementia. So we're trying to figure out what are those difficulties and how can we address them and find hopefully some solutions to improve access to care.
I mean, how important is it that people living with dementia can stay at home and have that independence for as long as they can?
So it's hugely important. And I think if we think about us as well, if we think what would we like to do when we're getting older or when we are young and have dementia, we would probably want to stay in our own home where we have the comforts of our family and also where we know where we are, because it can be really difficult for someone with cognitive deficits, with memory problems, to readjust to a new environment, such as a care home. There's these different surroundings. So people with dementia want to stay at home for as long as possible.
Yeah, and it's also, as you say, about the help they can receive once there is a diagnosis, because they'll need a lot of support. And really, Clarissa, it's not something a lot of people think about until it comes into their life, is it?
I know. And I suppose most often people tend to think about healthcare as opposed to social care, but social care is just as important. So what we mean by social care is once someone has a diagnosis of dementia, they will probably need a paid home carer to come into the home at some point to help them with getting dressed, managing their medication, any other kind of care-related tasks. But social care also means going to support groups in the community or going to daycare centres, respite care, and at some point maybe going into a care home. So there is a lot of need for support, yes.
And tell us about the guidance that's available for family members or friends who are trying to deal with and look after their loved ones' finances, because that can be difficult, can't it, as we heard Kath say?
Yeah, so we've just finished a study with Kath and with another lovely carer, Joan Carton, as well. They've been really helped guiding us with that research. So we spoke to people living with dementia, young and old, and their unpaid carers, so family members and friends, about what's it like to manage your finances, to manage the finances of your loved one, and accessing help and support. And we found there were lots of difficulties for caregivers in particular to access any type of guidance, leaflets, knowledge about how to manage the relatives' finances. So as Kath was saying, having a power of attorney as soon as possible can be helpful, but even if someone has power of attorney, there are still barriers. And so, for example, setting up new standing orders or anything else in terms of managing the finances, it can be quite tricky. And there doesn't seem to be any coherent guidance for people with dementia and their carers in terms of how to manage the finances. And just on that point as well, we know that accessing social care, often people will have to pay a lot of money themselves. They will get some support from the local authority, depending on the income, but not always. So people need to be aware how they can access financial support and how they can pay for the care in advance.
Yeah, it's a good point. And you also write about how the cost of living crisis is affecting people with dementia as well. Tell us about that.
Yes. So we've worked together with the Alzheimer Society, especially Bronte Heath at the Society. It was a really fascinating survey. They've done over 1,000 participants, completed this survey on how people with dementia are affected by the cost of living crisis across 3 UK nations, so that's England, Wales and Northern Ireland. And we found that cost of living crisis has impacted people with dementia negatively, but particularly around 1/5 of people with dementia across that survey were struggling to pay for social care. Again, that's home care, support groups, daycare, etc. But the interesting thing about that as well, and depressing thing as well, is that in addition to the existing inequalities that we know are there, we found that men with them, so male people with dementia, but also people from minority ethnic backgrounds were facing particular challenges in paying for their care, which means, as a result of the cost of living crisis, fewer people are able to access the care that they need, and they will struggle in the long term with this.
Yeah. Let me ask you, Dr. Clarissa, in an ideal world, what would you like to see happen to make the lives of those living with dementia easier, and also for the carers too?
Absolutely. And I appreciate the focus on carers, because often carers are neglected. So I think, sorry, I hear myself. There are a couple of points. First and foremost, people with dementia and their carers should have a contact person. Often people get a diagnosis, if they do get one, and then they don't have any follow-up consultations or support. But we know that having a link person, a care navigator, a support worker, that can really help accessing care and support and improve their lives. Another thing, there needs to be much more investment into social care from the government to enable people from less well-off financial backgrounds to access all the care they need. And I think lastly, just picking up on the unpaid carers point, unpaid carers, but also the paid care workforce, they need to be much better recognized for the tremendous amount of work that they're doing. And we know from the Alzheimer Society, there are around 700,000 unpaid carers for people with dementia, for example, in the country. So they need much better support and recognition in an ideal world.
Clarissa, just finally, Clarissa, how can we find out more about your research? Is there a website we can go to? Is there anyone we can talk to?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So if you want to find out more about our work, go on the Liverpool University webpage or the webpage of the Applied Research Collaboration Northwest Coast. But you can also follow me on Twitter, so I post quite a bit about our team's work there.
Thank you so much for your time today, and congratulations on the wonderful work you're doing as well, Dr. Clarissa.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.